Go for it.
Okay. Hi, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Kelly Frieder, and I'm the chair of the Mass Envirothon Steering Committee. The Envirothon is Massachusetts' leading natural resource education program for high school students, emphasizing hands-on, team-oriented problem solving and community involvement that prepares young people for environmental careers and active citizenship. Even though this is not the way we or anyone wanted the year to go, we are glad to have you here this afternoon so we can keep learning together even though we're apart. Our presenter today is Roger Brooks, Business Manager for the City of Leominster Water and Sewer Department of the DPW, a role he has been in for over 25 years. He's also a member of many local and state water committees and associations. He's an ardent supporter of the Envirothon and is the reason why the May competition has taken place in Leominster 2 times over the past 10 years. We are truly appreciative of all he has done to strengthen and support our program. On behalf of the Mass Envirothon Steering Committee, I would like to thank Roger for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us today. Roger is knowledgeable about all things water and loves to answer questions, so I encourage everyone to ask questions using the question and answer button on the bottom of the screen. I'd also like to remind everyone that this session is being recorded and will be available on the Mass Envirothon website at massenvirothon.org. Thank you and welcome, Roger.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me, and I've enjoyed sponsoring the Envirothon with the City of Leominster a couple of times over the last few years. I think it's a tremendous opportunity for high school students to learn about the environment, learn about water, and I think it will hopefully lead to people being interested in careers in the water, wastewater, or environmental field. As the Secretary of Environmental Affairs has participated as a high school student, I guess, and she's now advanced to being in charge of the entire state program. So that speaks volumes to the Envirothon. My presentation today is going to be about managing a drinking water supply. I will try to go through all the aspects that we look at when we're preparing budgets and assigning tasks for the maintenance and upgrade of our water system. If I have time, I will also get into the wastewater side of that. The first part of any water system is the scope of service. What are we trying to do? We're trying to provide safe drinking water to the public. The origin of the water supply, whether it's a surface water reservoir, gravel packed well, it's very important to us to maintain the integrity of the surrounding area in the watershed. In Leominster, we've purchased significant land over the last 20 years, and prior to that, they had secured well over 1,000 acres of watershed land to protect the resources that we have. So our raw water going to the treatment plant has been able to be relatively trouble-free. We have had some issues with TOCs, which are caused by deciduous trees dropping their leaves into the water, and they break down as they get to the plant, and that will result in additional work for the plant operators in trying to eliminate that when we're treating the water. When the water goes from our reservoirs, we have 7 reservoirs. We have 3 treatment plants and 3 pressure zones. We have a low, a high, and an intermediate pressure system. The reservoirs are the No-Town Reservoir, which is in the north side of Leominster and is the high pressure system. The Fallbrook Reservoir, which is a smaller reservoir, it's the smallest of the 3, and it only provides 1 million gallons a day in adequate water treatment. And then the low pressure system is our distributing reservoir system. This system was part of the original system in Leominster, and it has the most recent treatment plant. It was built in 2012, and drinking water in that system has always been really, really good quality water. We operate our plants under a contract with Veolia Water Systems. Veolia Water has done contract work with the city since 1983. They began doing water treatment for us in 1996. We have a permit, a registration from the state for 4.9 million gallons a day. We are presently operating at about 3.8 to 3.9 million gallons a day, and that's after having reduced our water consumption from approximately 4.5 million a day. So we've dropped approximately 25% over the last 20 years. Obviously, the importance of that conservation is it provides good reserves for us, and during times of drought, we're able to maintain adequate service using an odd even watering program so that we don't waste water. The treatment plants that we have are all significant in the sense that they treat for a number of contaminants. EPA has a list of over 90 contaminants that they require drinking water systems to meet. The ones that we have the most time spent on eliminating are the THM and HAA5s, which are disinfection byproducts. When you disinfect the water, the byproducts of that disinfection go out into the system, and you want to make sure they fall within drinking water approved parameters. After the water leaves the treatment plant, it goes out into the distribution system. The distribution system in Leominster is approximately 175 miles of various size pipe. We've had a water system in Leominster since the late 1800s. The original pipes, we had some pipes that were actually made of water. The materials used today can be either heavy plastic. They can be a material called ductile iron, which is the most common in the Northeast. And also, there was a time when they used asbestos cement pipe, which is no longer used, and it's difficult to work with because of its potential to have air discharge on the asbestos. So it hasn't been used. That hasn't been used in systems for a number of years, but many communities, including ours, have it located within the system, and you have to pay attention when you're working on that if you have either a water break or any kind of activity in and around that. The programs that we have for delivering adequate water for homeowner needs are also, we also want to make sure that we have adequate water for fire protection. Fire protection is one of the primary reasons for water tanks, and making sure that you have adequate water supply to deliver to locations. This was one of the things that first started in the city of Boston back in the early 1800s, when they wanted to make sure that they didn't have issues with putting out fires. There had been a couple of significant fires back then, and they needed to upgrade their fire prevention systems. The other thing that was prevalent early on was contamination of water supplies, water that would be, say, spring water, or water that had been contaminated by septic systems and waste disposal. So the water system creation was a critical part of expanding and securing the safety of water to the public. As we've gone in Leominster from the treatment plant, now we go down through the distribution system, and we have a series of hydrants and service connections. I think I said we have 175 miles of pipe approximately throughout the city, and the number of hydrants usually is determined by the neighborhoods. You usually try and keep the fire hydrants 500 feet apart to provide the adequate fire protection. Going to the replacement of the pipe. Back in the early or late 1800s and early 1900s, cast iron pipe was used in these systems. And a lot of times cast iron pipe was not lined with cement, which would provide a break between the raw water going out into the system and to the users. So iron deposits in the water would adhere to the side of the cast iron pipe and create tuberculation, which would impede the flow of water and limit the pressure as you went forward. So one of the things that most communities are doing, you try and do an evaluation of how old your pipes are and look to the two things that we feel in Leominster are important are water quality and the number of service calls we have to make if a pipe breaks. Some pipes over the years, during the war years or years when the manufacturers didn't have materials, the pipe that was installed would not be as good a quality product, and you may wind up going back either because it's got tuberculation and it doesn't provide adequate water supply, or two, and a lot of people will tell you they have experienced this, is when we go out and flush hydrants to make sure there's no buildup in the lines, they will have rusty water calls. And the rusty water calls are from the tuberculation that's in the pipe. It's not hazardous to your health or anything, but it's aesthetically very unpleasing, and it can impact homeowners' clothing. If your parents are doing a wash or something like that, you'll see that it'll have an impact on the washing machine products when you take them out. All right, so one of the things you have to do is pay for the operation and maintenance of these plants, and you have to do revenues for adequate funding to pay for all of your costs. Your treatment plants have a number of chemicals. There are electrical costs that go into this. Some of the things we've done over the years are emphasizing expense reduction. What can we do to lower the cost? So when we're doing the O&M with a company like Veolia, we have taken over the responsibility of the electrical costs, and working with National Grid and a number of solar providers, we buy solar generated power that offsets some of our operating costs. Now, I was looking at something that I just received this afternoon, and between what we've done for budget purposes and what we've actually experienced for the first 5 months of the year, we've saved $115,000 in electrical costs. Now, that goes right to the ability to deliver a product without having to increase the costs, and the rate structure will benefit because we can take that savings and put it into capital, whether it be capital into the plants to keep them up to date, or put them into the distribution system, replacing pipe, and also upgrading meters and backflow preventers, which are items that we put in. One, the meters are used to determine how much consumption at each location. Backflow preventers are an item that are put in at primarily industrial and commercial locations so that you don't get feedback from those services and have that water get into the regular service line and contaminate large sections of the city system. So backflow preventers are something that are a critical portion of the distribution system to make sure that properties don't create a problem for the public at large. So when we look at an operating budget, we've just talked about a few things here. Rate structure is obviously number one. You have to make sure that you pay all your bills. So when you're preparing a budget, you look at what the cost is going to be for all of your fixed expenses. So you have staff. You want to make sure that all your staff gets paid. You have support services. Support services are all the small expenses that nobody really thinks about when you're using water, but it's the insurance bills, the health insurance for your staff, the retirement. There is a relatively new category called post-employment benefits. You'll see that in a lot of communities. If you check with either your local water department, or if you look at this municipality's operating budget, you'll see an item called OPEB, and that's other post-employment benefits. That's an expense for the retired staff. Once you retire, the municipality picks up a portion of your retirement costs. Those have to be funded on an ongoing basis. It's important that communities don't let those expenses get away from them. It's very easy because it's not an immediate expense. It's an expense that's going to happen down the road. But you really need to keep an eye on that. Another expense that has to be paid is your debt service expense. Now, when we do a project on a water treatment plant, for instance, like the distributing plant we talked about, the cost on that was approximately $7 million. We go to DEP, we apply for what's called a state revolving fund loan. We submit an application. It's a competitive application process. If you're approved for it, then you have to get documented approval from the Clean Water Trust that they will provide you with a loan to pay for the costs of that project. And then you work with DEP, local staff in whatever region you're in, and you work on the project, and we have regular meetings. We had ours monthly, and have continual upgrades so that the project doesn't fall behind schedule, and that you're also meeting the requirements of the drinking water program and the submittal that your engineers had worked on, to make sure that you're not deviating from what the actual submittal was. Now, that SRF loan is important because it's at a fixed 2% loan. You can go for 20 or even 30 years, depending upon your community's preference, but 20 years is pretty much the standard, and it's a pretty cost-effective way of doing these upgrades and getting state support. Also, on the debt service side, there may be items like watershed acquisition. We've purchased land in the past. You have to go to your local board. In the case of Leominster, we've gone to the city council and the mayor and said, we need to secure this particular property. We've been able to buy that property either with a direct fee acquisition, or we've worked with some nonprofit agencies like the Trustees of Reservations, the Leominster Land Trust, and gone in and worked together to obtain funding and buy these properties so that they're protecting the watershed areas. There's no adverse impact to stormwater runoff that might get into your reservoir system and then create an issue where you have additional treatment costs. So securing those watershed properties is a key component, and debt service is the one way that you really wind up going. There are a couple of programs. There is a water supply protection grant that's a 50% grant. And there's also, you can get a self-help program, which also requires passive recreation. So some systems don't allow residents or the general public to walk through their property. I know in Leominster, we came to an agreement with DCR, and there are trails, hiking trails that are contiguous to the Leominster State Forest. And there are also, there's a spot where you can go fish in the far end of the reservoir. Other communities may or may not allow it, and they may set their own regulations as to what locations are permitted. And then around the immediate reservoir areas, we like to keep people off that, keep a 400-foot radius away from our shorelines, except obviously in those fishing areas. Lastly, and what winds up being the key piece of your rate structure is capital projects. Now, in Leominster, we've maintained a crew that will go out and maintain some of the secondary streets in the city. It's cost effective for us. In Massachusetts, you have a requirement that you pay prevailing wage, which is determined by the state. But we felt that it was a lot more productive, and actually most of the people that work for us live in town, so there's a lot more pride in doing work within your own community. And so we've maintained a construction crew over the years, and they do approximately 3/4 of a mile to a mile of pipe, and we try and do 1.5 miles, sometimes 2 miles of pipe if we can, subject to funding. But these projects really are cost effective for us, and we can pick and choose depending upon those issues I referenced before, where either you have excessive water main breaks, or if you have dirty water calls where the water quality, because of the piping system, is not as good as it could be. And one of the things I think has really been an eye-opener over the last couple of years is the increased cost of materials. You go to buy a fire hydrant, the fire hydrant, has a cost. You're going to pay, over $2,000, probably $2,500 to buy one single hydrant. The water materials, like the pipe that goes in the ground, that pipe price went up in the last 2 years over 25%. The inflation rate didn't go up that much. So when you're looking to adjust your rates and keep in mind what the public's going through, you can't just jump a rate structure 25% in order to fund materials. So you have to take a good look and make some decisions as to how you're going to do it, which ones you're going to do first, and incrementally increase your materials that you have to do projects, and then other projects, you're just going to have to bid those and either fund those through the SRF program, or you're going to have to get a bond authorization from your municipality. But those also have you also have the opportunity with a couple of state programs. There's a state program now called MassWorks, which has really been a godsend for a lot of communities, because you can go in and submit an application. It's focused on what you're trying to improve in a particular neighborhood. They focus on housing, economic development, and improving the infrastructure in those areas. So there's, again, a competitive application process. But if you have the ability to work as a community to focus on upgrading an area, you can put this application together, replace your water and wastewater utilities that are deficient, and also provide for an improved neighborhood. And the sections we've done 2 of these. We're going to do another one, and I have to say that the overall benefit to the people in the sections of the city make a huge difference. We're an environmental justice community. We try to do things that are in the best interests of the entire city, and we've been able to put these in some neighborhoods that might not otherwise get investment, and then you generate the investment, and both the neighborhood and the city benefit because you improve the tax base, you improve the water quality, you improve the neighborhood morale, actually, because they're feeling that they get an investment that they wouldn't ordinarily get. So those are some of the things that we've done in terms of water. I'm just trying to think. I don't know if you have any questions, and then I can move on to the wastewater side. If anybody has something that they would like me to speak to or continue on. I don't know, Britta or Kelly?
I can ask you one question related to this. Is there
Sure.
anything regular people can do to protect water quality around reservoirs so water rates don't have to be increased to clean it?
Well, okay, so what the public can do is really the only real thing that the public could do is keep an eye on watersheds. We have a part-time person patrol. City of Worcester has a full-time program where they send people out throughout their water system. They've got 11 reservoirs, and they have an active, fully staffed watershed protection security department. Most of us that have smaller departments just don't have that ability. We can't afford to. It doesn't work for us. No, I think just being diligent. One of the things we found when we did the cooperative programs with the trust, we did the Trust for Public Land, the Trustees of Reservations, and the Leominster Land Trust. So by putting in the trails through the watershed, you have the ability to get feedback from people that are enjoying passive recreation. You can cross-country ski, you can hike. So the people that are out there doing that will let you know if there's inappropriate activity or if there's something that we really need to get out and address. But that's really the limit. I mean, you can contact the water department if you see something that's inappropriate. That's really the best way.
Cool, thanks. I don't want to open a political can of worms, but I'm curious about this idea of, or not an idea, but the reality of basically outsourcing the either water treatment or water delivery with a private firm. I live in Holyoke, and
okay, so it's more common than you think. I mean, they deal with a number of communities. They deal with Lynn, Sturbridge, parts of Southbridge. So it's a public-private partnership, and what happens is they have obviously a financial interest. They're there to make money, but they also have an obligation to maintain the water quality requirements that EPA and DEP require on both the water and wastewater facilities. They have extensive training. They also have a priority on safety. Safety is really one of the key focuses of their operation. So when I first started, they'd gone 25 years without any lost time accidents. On the municipal side, you have people out with injuries all the time. So it's been cost effective for us. I think some of the savings that we've been able to generate, either with material procurement or technology that they're aware of. They're an international firm. They know what materials can work. You can have 2 or 3 different products that are going to work in similar fashion. But for instance, EPA required us to get to a 2 parts per billion on the phosphorus effluent. And we had to put in a technology to eliminate the phosphorus in our effluent stream. And we were trying to do it on the most cost-effective basis. Now, it isn't just the cost of installation, it's also the cost of maintaining it and operating it. And what are the expenses that go with it? Because you're going to have added electrical costs, you're going to have added chemical costs, and whatever else might have to go into that, as well as a staffing cost. And we did it in what I consider to be an extremely cost-effective method, because they've experienced that. They came up with a couple suggestions. We ran those by DEP at the time. DEP was evaluating numerous technology options to try and make sure that communities could meet that standard. And I feel very good. I mean, our total maintenance cost on that was only like between $25,000 and $30,000 a year in added costs, and we were really concerned that it was going to be significantly more than that. So and back to the fact, a lot of the people that work there, it's a private firm. but a lot of the people that work there live in and around Leominster, and it's a facility that's well maintained, and they've received numerous EPA awards for both safety and operational efficiency and excellence. So we're very happy with it, to be honest with you.
It sounds like a great deal all around.
Well, it has to be that way, to be honest with you. It doesn't work for the city. If there's no benefit and you have violations attributable to either the water quality issue or the effluent issues at the plants, it doesn't work. And they have staff that goes out and maintains like pump stations, electrical units. They have, as we were discussing earlier, some of the savings on electricity. They had a number of times when they would go in and retrofit a pump with variable frequency drives. Now, the variable frequency drives limit the electrical consumption to what is necessary. And so we didn't have the increases in costs. And then as we've done some of these solar procurements, it was difficult because we wanted to allocate those against our electric bills at the facilities, and National Grid would not let Veolia receive the credit. So what had to happen, we secured that so that we pay that, but we also put a limit on what the adjustments to the electrical consumption would be, and they've been less than projected, which is a tribute to them for their operating excellence. And it's also a benefit to the ratepayers because it's saving them. You know, we expect to save $300,000 this year in costs.
That's amazing, and,
Yeah.
and really cool to hear that the solar power is, yay, green energy.
Well,
You have, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, I mean, one of the things, you know, we're looking at climate change, and all of your water suppliers are looking at ways to save money. And, you know, I think it's been obvious to certainly myself, but probably to a lot of the other people, the storms we've had are more intense and severe in terms of how they impact us. Power outages are going to be more and more prevalent, I think, because of the severity of the storms. You're going to also see we had a drought. The drought task force just sent out a bulletin today. We've gone to level 1, but we're still in a moderate drought. But I think you're going to see extremes. I think you're going to have years where you're going to have 55 to 60 inches of rain a year. And that happened to us a number of years ago. We had 59 inches in Leominster. The average rainfall should be 45, 46 inches. And then, you know, you may have another year like the drought of record, which was in the early 60s, 64, 65, where you're going to get 30 inches or less. So we have to prepare for that. You have to be efficient in how you process and deliver your water. And you're also going to have systems in place to make sure the public gets serviced, but we can't waste the assets that we have. So that's kind of what we've seen here, and certainly in the last few years, I think it's presented itself kind of dramatically.
That leads perfectly into another question that's been posted by an attendee.
Sure.
How did you reduce water consumption by 14.4%? That is a huge amount. Congratulations.
Well, okay, so there are two things that go into that. We all live on a budget, and the first thing that had to happen, we had to do some upgrades, so you had to do a rate increase. So the rate increase came into effect. We started when we did the first treatment plant upgrade in 1996, 97. So as your rates go up, people are paying more attention. They're not using as much water because it's going to cost them more money. And that's true throughout the country. And number two, there are a lot of people that are very conscientious. They want to do the right thing. You know, you take shorter showers. You don't leave the water running when you're brushing your teeth. You just turn the water on, get the toothbrush wet, and then shut the water off. You put on low flow shower heads, toilet replacement. In 2004, I was on the state conservation for water supply, and what we looked at was toilets were 5 gallons. Now they're 1.2 gallons. Washing machines. Washing machine would use 30 gallons of water to do a wash. Now you're down around 10, 11. So there's been a huge emphasis by technology to accommodate the needs of the public by reducing water consumption, because if you have a washing machine that does, uses 2/3 less water than what used to be out there, the person using that isn't going to have to spend as much money doing clothes. The regulators are happy because it's a product that's efficient. So you've eliminated 2/3 of your water consumption on washing clothes. Your bathroom facility uses 3.8 roughly gallons less per flush, and most residents use their waste facilities for it's about 8 to 10 times per person. So depending on your house and how efficient you can be, you can save a lot of money. So it wasn't just conservation that the city implemented. It was an across the board emphasis on doing the right thing, trying to make things more efficient. The other one that there was a lot of emphasis on is lawn irrigation, and people like to water their lawns regardless of how much it costs. But a lawn usually only needs a little over an inch, maybe an inch and a half a week. And, the one thing I think that drives regulators and water supplies crazy is when, it's raining cats and dogs and somebody's got their sprinkler system on because it's automated. I can tell you for a fact that drives the regulators crazy. But it's something that most people have taken a real active interest in, and they've done a good job as far as minimizing unnecessary water use. So I
Very
don't know.
cool. Thank you. Thank you
Sure.
for answering that. Attendees, do you have any other questions on water delivery that you'd like Roger to address now? You can either type them in the Q&A or the chat, or I can let you talk. If you raise your hand, I think you can do that.
So I'll just go quickly over the wastewater system because it is part of your neighborhood delivery system, and something it depends on the size. Leominster's a small, not small, but it's one of 37, I think, cities in the state. We have approximately 41 to 43,000 people that live in Leominster, and roughly a little over 90% of the population is on the water system. Approximately, I think, probably 80 to 85% is on the wastewater system. Our wastewater system is designed to handle 9.3 million gallons per day of wastewater. Right now, we're averaging somewhere in the vicinity of 6.4 to 6.5. We're finalizing the last of 3 phases of upgrades to the wastewater facility. We're doing an aeration system upgrade and clarifier upgrades. The systems that are there are going to have a huge benefit from a energy consumption standpoint. The aeration facility is 37 years old, so everything that's there is not efficient. And number two, it's more the bigger concern we have, to be honest with you, is that you can't get parts. So as you go into work on some of these things, you're modifying what's there. You're not really replacing it with more efficient and better product. So we're doing a complete upgrade of the aeration unit and those clarifiers. We've done the rest of the plant. As I said before, we put in an active flow system to reduce the phosphorus. That had the added benefit of reducing some of the other effluent characteristics. Certainly copper was lowered going out into the river. We discharge to the Nashua River, the north branch of the Nashua, and that runs to Pepperell Pond. South branch of the Nashua runs from Watershed Reservoir through the Clinton wastewater treatment plant, and also goes to Pepperell Pond. And then there's a very active watershed group, Nashua River Watershed Association. They do a great job. They've been good partners with us. We have a good dialogue with them. They've helped us with a couple of things. We've worked with them on improving some of the water quality in the Nashua River, and I can tell you we've restored it to the extent that I've seen people on Facebook posting with 12-inch brook trout that they took downstream of our wastewater plant. So really happy to see that, and it just talks to the health of the river in general. And the Nashua River Watershed Group, and particularly Marion Stoddard, were instrumental in getting started on that. But it's really a tribute to the entire community to step up and make sure that those resources are in really pristine condition, and it shows with what the habitat is there now. Cost of treatment, we spend a little over $1.5 million a year on operation and maintenance of that facility. That includes all the chemicals and repairs that have to be made. I went over the Srf loan on water. Srf program also provides funding for wastewater. The wastewater is a clean water program, and that program has been in place for, I'm going to say, over 30 years. I forget when they actually started it, but it started with 0%. It went to 2%. And now they offer 0% if you have a nutrient removal component into your effluent upgrades. So it can be a very cost-effective way to upgrade your facility. I think regardless of where you are, whether you're down along the coast or you're over by the Connecticut River, or certainly in Central Mass where I am, if you can do the upgrades and you do those on a 20-year program at 0%, I don't see how it's much more effective and cost effective for the public than that. It's been a real help. It's a partnership between the federal government and the state, and then the state provides more money to offset some of the expenses. So it's one of the most cost-effective, well-run programs that the state offers, and it's a real benefit to the municipalities. For us, utility costs, one of the things we've done besides the solar is we've gone into the facilities and we've done either pump replacements and upgrades, the VFDs we talked about earlier. Also, you can look at your lighting. We have exterior lighting and interior lighting. Right now, I'm working with National Grid to replace some of the lighting fixtures in there, as well as put in LEDs. Just as a side note, we did the entire city's streetlight program, putting in LED lighting, lowered the city's cost by more than 50% on that. Those high pressure sodium lights use a lot of energy, and so that was a cost savings. But at the wastewater facility, we're really working to make it as energy efficient as possible. And these things have really helped us. You also have sludge disposal, MWRA. All the flow goes to Deer Island, and then they pelletize some of their sludge for resale for fertilizer applications. Leominster, we don't do that. We send our sludge after it's been processed and dewatered. We send it down to the Upper Blackstone treatment plant. That's the local treatment facility that provides sludge disposal for a number of communities on a contract basis. City of Worcester's wastewater goes there anyway, but we actually have to haul sludge to that point. Slight cost for hauling, but they've made it fairly cost effective for us to take our sludge there and be processed. One thing that we have not done that I wanted to do, and I don't know that I'll be around long enough to do that, but I really would like to see recycled water, gray water opportunities where you can take the effluent, instead of going out into the receiving water, you can take that and pipe it for industrial applications, whether it's cooling systems at some of the plastics companies or some other kind of industrial use. But I think the technology's there, and the opportunity is just, you have to make sure it pays for itself. You can't put it in and have it be a cost center without any revenue. So, but that's the one thing I think that going forward, especially to the people I'm talking to now, where, that generation is going to be able to do things that we haven't accomplished. And I think there are some really good careers that are going to be out there for high school students that want to go to college and study in environmental science. Just a tremendous goals and opportunities to fulfill. And in the water and wastewater business, one of the things we lack is a good resource for operators, people that want to be equipment operators or operating in these plants or running the plants, design engineers. A lot of young people are getting into it, but there's a real need for more. And I think it's a great career. I've spent 35 years doing water and wastewater activities, 25 with the city and 10 in the private sector. And I think for anybody that's on this call, it's really a satisfying business to be in if you have the opportunity and the interest. So I wish you all the best as far as that goes. And that's pretty much it on the sewer side. I don't know, Britta, if you have something else or other questions.
That's just fascinating. Thank you, Roger. I mean, I know I keep saying this. I just turn on the tap and it's awesome. And it's so neat to think about it from this other perspective of the
one of the things, if some of the people listening in, just go into your own house. If you're on a public water supply, go into the house, go into the basement, take a look at what comes through the foundation wall. A lot of the, most of the newer houses are copper, but some have old galvanized pipe. The galvanized pipe services should be replaced. They're obsolete. They probably have leaks in them that's not making, all the water doesn't come from the city's pipe into the house, because if you get an old pipe that goes in, and a lot of your communities have good records that'll tell you whether or not the material there is galvanized pipe or copper or plastic, whatever. But and then look at the meter and get an idea. When you look at a little dial down there, if you see that little dial spinning, that means you get a water being used. Now, one of the biggest problems for homeowners is leaks in your toilets, and people don't have an understanding of how much water that actually uses. Little pinpricks can use hundreds of gallons in a week. So if you go downstairs and nobody's using anything in the house, and that there's a little like football shaped dial there, and if that's moving, you're actually using water and you don't know it. So it could be some kind of leaking plumbing fixture or whatever, but it's worth knowing what's in your house so that you don't get surprised if you have hot water tank. Sometimes a hot water tank will start to leak. Pressure valve won't work properly, and you'll be losing water there, and it won't be long before you lose your hot water. So, but different things, it's easy to forget that those things are part of your day-to-day activity. And we take them for granted. All of us do. And but it's worth knowing where that stuff is and what to do, where the shutoff is. If you had a leak in the house, make sure that you know where the shutoff is coming in from the street, so that if there is a leak and something needs to be shut off immediately, you'll know where it is. You can run down and do that. Take 5 minutes and you'll save yourself a whole lot of headaches.
All right, I have homework. Question from an attendee who's taken really good notes. So Wendell says he wrote down that your water distribution is 3.85 million gallons a day, and wastewater is 9.3 million.
Yeah, that's okay. So
and that's different, right? So what?
Okay, so his point is well taken. So we send out to residents approximately 3.8, 3.9 million gallons of water a day. The rest of the flow that you're seeing down at the wastewater plant is groundwater condition. A lot of what they call I&I, that's inflow and infiltration. That can come from a number of sources. It can be sources such as groundwater that gets into floor drains. Floor drains should be piped to the wastewater system. You also have leaks in, let's say you have a sewer line that runs from your house out to the street. That service line is made of clay. The clay joints that are out there have exhausted their useful life and they have either breaks or they'll have sections where the compound used to seal them has deteriorated and is no longer in good shape. So you're taking groundwater. A lot of, let's be honest, most of your wastewater plants are at the low point in the city. They're down by the receiving water, whether it's a lake, a river, stream, whatever. So along the way, all those pipes are running close to groundwater areas that will have high groundwater conditions. And any of those joints in any of those pipes, especially older systems, are going to be taking groundwater. That's just an expense. Now, the plant was designed for the 9.3. We take in the 6.4, 6.5, but it's a constant battle to tighten up your system. We spent 3 years. DEP came out with a program in 2017 and 18. We did an evaluation of the entire city with meters. You put a gauge into your collection system in a manhole, and you get an idea of what the flow is in that particular subsystem. So you break the city down. In Leominster, we had 25 subsystems. So you break that down and you find out, okay, where are the biggest problems in terms of getting inappropriate water into the sewer system? Is it groundwater coming in through the laterals? Because service laterals coming from a house to a main may not be secure. You may have gaps in that. If you have gaps in a high groundwater condition, that groundwater is getting into your sewer system. People might have roof drains, roof leaders that'll go, mostly in older houses. The newer houses don't do this, but a lot of your older, especially in older cities and the neighborhoods that had established maybe industrial buildings or old office buildings where the roof pitches to the middle of the property, that drain is probably going into the sewer system. So those are inappropriate contributions to the sewer flow that we try and get out. And that's I've got to be honest, that's a constant battle. I've worked on that for 25 years and we've done a tremendous job, but it's an ongoing thing. And the older your collection system is, the more likely you are to have serious inflow and infiltration issues. That's a good question, though.
Nice attention to detail, Wendell, catching that. and cool, I hadn't really thought about that. Wow, there's just so many aspects here. All right, anybody else have a question for Roger that you'd like to ask? Well, we've got him right here. Well, thank you so much for your time and expertise and support of Envirothon in this way. We really appreciate it. And,
one thing to pass on, if everybody listening has the opportunity, DEP has put on their website a climate preparedness for water resources site. And I think the people on this call should be interested in it. It gives you some good information, gives you things to look at. And there was a project done in conjunction with Worcester Polytechnic Institute. There is a site there, so to go there and do some research, I think you get a lot out of it.
That sounds really cool. I will track down that website and attach it to this so that people can check it out.
Okay, very good. Glad to participate, and I wish everybody the best.
Have a great evening. Thanks everybody for coming.